I can't tell you how to have a perfect house, but I can tell you how to go from completely bewildered and overwhelmed and bumfuzzled to understanding and feeling like, okay, I think I can actually do this.
This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Dana K. White is a decluttering expert for the rest of us, the ones who struggle. I found her about 4 years ago when I was just starting How She Moms, and her first book, How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind, quickly became my home management Bible. Finally, someone who got me. Since then, she's written 2 more books, Decluttering at the Speed of Life, which I've been using to guide this year's spring cleaning, and her latest book, Organizing for the Rest of Us, which will be arriving at my doorstep tomorrow. She also has a fabulous podcast with, gasp, 333 episodes where she tells the truth about cleaning and organizing. You can find all of this and more at aslobcomesclean.com. Like Dana herself, I've been reading home management and cleaning books for years. I learned something from every book I read and made incremental progress, but when I inevitably fell off the wagon, I just felt like a failure. Enter Dana with a home management plan that works for highly distractible, messy people like me. Now there's a spectrum here, and messy and tidy are certainly relative terms. But if you're somewhere in between total hoarder and Martha Stewart, I'm betting that some of Dana's techniques will resonate with you. In about 6 minutes, Dana will tell her Cinderella story of how she transformed from a self-described slob to a home management expert. But if you're anything like me, you want some quick answers right off the bat. You want me to prove that Dana is the genius I claim she is. So I'm going to start out with some gold that can get you started decluttering right away. Seriously, pick a messy spot in your house and jump right in while you're listening. You know you want to. Here's Dana's 5-step decluttering process.
So the 5-step process for decluttering is designed to where you work through the entire mess, but you can stop at any point and the space is only better. And then you can come back to it later and you just keep on going with the process. So the first step is trash, because there are no emotions involved. There's no decisions to be made. You're simply pulling out trash. And with every item that leaves, first of all, you're moving, which breaks through that decluttering paralysis feeling. And then as you pull things out, the space gets a little bit less visually overwhelming with each item that leaves. And then therefore you're more able to keep going, and I like to recommend that people take before pictures and process pictures so they can see, oh, wow, I worked for 5 minutes pulling out trash and this space looks better. Like it was worth my 5 minutes, The second step is what I call easy stuff, even though trash is the easiest of the easy stuff. Second step is easy stuff, meaning anything that has an established home somewhere else in the house. It's just not there for whatever reason. And so we take those things to their established home. So there's no decisions that are being made at this point. Yes, there's physical effort that you're putting out, but you're not putting out emotional effort or mental effort. There's nothing that you're deciding. You're just literally saying, what is in here, but has a home somewhere else, getting it out of there. Okay. Third step is declutter, which this can happen at any point in the process. I just put this in here because for people like me who tend to be overwhelmed anyway, and who are like, okay, I have to do this perfectly because I've always, not felt successful at decluttering before. I've got to do this perfectly. There are going to be things that you don't need to waste your time asking decluttering questions. Literally just like, I'm going to stick this in the donate box without asking any questions. That's what I call my declutter. Like it's okay to just put it in the box, and if you get out the trash, the easy stuff, and the declutter, this space is going to be a lot less overwhelming and it's going to be better. And then you're down to the stuff where at first glance, you're like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. Okay. So then the fourth step is asking my 2 decluttering questions. The first one is, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Not where should it go, but where would I actually walk first if I needed this particular item? And that determines where the home for it needs to be. Okay. And then the part of that question is then to take it there right now. Like, don't put it into a pile. Don't put it into a box to deliver elsewhere later, because that works in an ideal world. I don't live in an ideal world. The only way I can guarantee you progress is if you take it there now. So even if you get distracted, that space is better than it was before because stuff has left, which means you have successfully decluttered. Even though you're not finished decluttering, you have successfully decluttered because stuff is gone. Okay. So that's the first question. If you can't answer the question, where would I look for this first? Like if your answer is, oh, blah, 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 where, I mean, you just have no answer for that. Then the second question you would ask, and that is, if I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? And the reality is, if you never would have gone looking for it, you would have either made do or you would have gone out and bought another one. And it would have sat in that closet or that drawer or whatever for however long, and if you would have gone out and bought another one, then you'd have two in your house. And so I had to decide that even though now I will remember because I got rid of it, I'll remember, wait a minute, I got rid of this. And I just, the thing that I need.
Right.
I mean, because that happens to all of us. I'm like, I had to decide that it was worth it to me to have this space usable, decluttered, functional between now and this hypothetical time when I might need it again, because I had to accept the reality that I would never have even looked for it anyway. So the only reason that I remember having it is because I decluttered it. I wouldn't have remembered if I hadn't been going through this space and making this space usable. So if you say, oh, but I do remember that I had it, well, then you have to have a place where you would look for it first. So go back to that question and say, okay, then let's maybe be honest with myself. Where's the first place where I would go looking? Not where you think you would find it, but where you would look first. Even if you have no confidence whatsoever that it would be there, what's the first place, where you would look for it? And then at that point, after you've gone through everything, now there's only left in this space what you would look for in this space, right? Because you've removed everything else. And at that point, you have to implement the container concept. The container concept is that every space is a limit. Like containers, contrary to what I always thought, are not for putting things in. They are meant to serve as limits. They are boundaries. And so any space that I'm working in is its own boundary. So like a drawer doesn't grow because I want to keep more stuff. The drawer is the size of the drawer. And so I pull out my least favorite things until the only things that are left actually fit comfortably in that space, usably. Like I could actually get to what I need to get to and use it without the space, becoming a jumbled mess because I need to get something out of it. So the two parts of that one are, first thing to do is consolidate, meaning put like items together within that space. And by doing that, you're naturally going to reveal, oh, I've got 25 staplers or whatever, and then your brain usually goes, I don't actually need 25 staplers, whatever, and then the last one is just to purge the things that are your least favorite until you only have what will comfortably fit in there.
Genius, am I right? Now, this is definitely a simplified version of her process. She wrote a whole book about it after all, but it gives you a good idea of Dana's approach. I'm still geeking out that I actually got to interview Dana and so excited to share the rest of our conversation. She'll share the story of how she figured out how to keep her house under control, and then we discuss the difference between decluttering and organizing, the impact of both nature and nurture on the way we keep house, clutter thresholds, and teaching kids how to declutter. Enjoy! Can we start off by you just telling me your deslobification journey?
Sure. So I wanted to be a writer. Ultimately, I wanted a creative outlet because I was a theater arts teacher. I enjoyed writing, and I always thought, well, writing would be the thing that I feel like could work with motherhood. I now know there's a lot more to it than I had in my brain, at the time, but I thought, okay, surely that could be something that could be a creative outlet for me that would work with motherhood, because a theater arts teacher, a lot of people do it. I was like, that's evenings, it's like every evening of the week till really late. And I just couldn't see how that would work with my kids being little. And so I thought, well, this will be, something that I'll pursue someday. Well, then blogs came along. And it was back in 2008 when I realized what they were. I'd heard the word before, but I didn't know what they were. And I thought, that's it. Like, that is what I need to be doing. I need to start a blog. And I watched people doing that, turning it into a business. And I didn't start one until August of 2009 because my house was a disaster. Like it was a complete and total embarrassment. And I just thought if I write about anything to do with motherhood, I would feel like I had to hide the fact that my house was such a disaster. And that's just contrary to my personality. Like I don't edit what comes out of my mouth very well. I just I suffer from excessive honesty, so I didn't want to do that. And so I kept trying to get my house under control, even though it had been a lifelong struggle. Like my entire life I had struggled. And so, um, it was basically one morning or when I was actually in church and I was really frustrated because I was like, why can I not get my house together? Like, why is this such a struggle for me? Because my second child was going to be starting kindergarten. He's the one who's graduating this year. So he was going to start kindergarten the next day and I was going to have one kid at home, which when you have multiple kids at home, you have to, coordinate nap times and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is the time. This is when I should start a blog. And yet my house was still a disaster, even though I had tried and tried and tried to get under control. And so that was supposed to be my practice blog. I made up a fake name. This was the idea that came to me while I was sitting there in church. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a practice blog, get my house under control. The name A Slob Comes Clean came to me, even though I had never called myself slob. I'd often said, but it's not like I'm a slob, because I had all kinds of reasons why I would say I wasn't a slob, but I ultimately was. So this name came to me and I just started it thinking I will do this for a couple months, figure out what the deal is with my house. And then I'll be able to learn about blogging in the meantime. And then I'll start the blog about what I'm actually going to write about. Like that. This is just practice. Nobody's going to know about it. I didn't tell my husband, didn't tell my mom, my best friend, anybody, And so, here we are. That was 2009 and it is now what, 2022, which is crazy to think that this is still the thing that I write about. But, because I used a fake name, I had no reason to not be completely honest because I'd called myself a slob, which is the worst thing I could say. I had no reason to try to justify or pretend. I was like, I'm tired of pretending. I am just going to figure this thing out. And I was totally, completely honest with myself and with the non-existent readers at the time, just showing actual pictures of what I was dealing with. I just started trying to do some things. And then when I would resist doing them, I would write about why I was resisting it and try to figure it out and try to come up with, ways that worked for my personality. And what I realized over time was that I was not the only one who had these thoughts, that looked at my house this way, that overanalyzed, that overthought, all that kind of stuff to the point of not actually doing anything. And so, I realized there were a lot of people like me and they were learning from me, even though I kept telling them, please do not learn from me. Why would anyone learn from me about this kind of stuff? And then it's probably about 3 years in that I wrote my first ebook, which was 28 Days to Hope for Your Home, kind of like leading people through the process. And that was a huge turning point for me because I had every time people would say, well, tell us how to do this too. I was like, no, because knowing from myself and what I used to be like, I thought if somebody is going to read a book about getting their house under control, they want to know how to make their house perfect and keep it perfect forever. And I'm like, I will never be able to teach someone how to do that because I was learning over the course of the years of working on my house that this was a lifelong struggle. This was not just, oh, now I get it. It's not a struggle anymore. Like this is actually a legitimate struggle for me and it always will be. And so finally I came to the point actually through a blogging friend who was like, Dan, you've got to do this. I went, oh, okay. I can't tell you how to have a perfect house, but I can tell you how to go from completely bewildered and overwhelmed and bumfuzzled, all these, whatever the words that describe, I don't get it. I can tell you how to go from that to understanding and feeling like, okay, I think I can actually do this. And through that, I realized that there was a real need for someone to teach that stuff because most people who talk about this stuff are naturally organized and they can't even imagine what my starting point was. Like they don't even understand that I needed to do a whole lot of stuff before I even got to the point where most organizing advice could even be sort of applied in my home.
Yeah, it makes me think of this time when I had two kids. I was completely underwater, especially my kitchen with, the mess that kids make. And I had a friend who was one of those naturally organized people. And I was just tell me how, like, what do you do when your kitchen gets like this? And she's like, looked at me dumbfounded, like, my kitchen has never been like this. And she wasn't even
Exactly.
trying to criticize me. She was just like, well, I don't even, she couldn't even comprehend how I got to that point where there were so many crumbs on the ground and dishes. And, I'm like, how do you dig yourself out of this? And she could not give me advice because she had never been there.
Right. And it happened so fast. I remember way years before I'd actually started my own deslobification journey. I remember seeing an Oprah where, which I have so many defining moments in my life of having seen an Oprah on some subject,
Right.
but I remember seeing an Oprah where somebody was there and they showed a picture of her kitchen and the lady was saying, well, that was just one weekend's worth of a mess. Like it was clean on Friday. And then whenever somebody had come into her home and seen this horrible mess in the kitchen, she was like, it was clean on Friday. And Oprah said something like, honey, a mess like that can't happen in 2 days. And I was like, yes, it can. It absolutely can. And it just made me realize we're not speaking the same language. It made me very skeptical of who could help me because I was like, people don't get it. Like I knew that lady was telling the truth, and maybe she saw it differently, whatever. But I knew, yes, a mess like that can absolutely happen in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So you make great distinctions in your books about the difference between cleaning, organizing, and decluttering. Can you explain those to me?
Sure. So I used to think that when my house was a complete and total disaster, I was like, well, I've got to clean my house. And the first thing I did was declutter, which I was really just moving everything into the master bedroom because that was the door that I could lock and keep guests out of, Um, and then I would clean, which meant I was starting in the kitchen, and the kitchen was a total disaster and every dish was dirty. And I would start in that space and then I would spend hours in there and then I would be exhausted and never get to the rest of my house. Um, and so that's what cleaning was to me. So like other people, I would look at their house, I'd be in their house, I say, oh, I never clean. And I was like, what? Like, how is that even possible? Your house looks great. And they're like, no, really, I never clean. And it just did not compute to me. But over time, so I started with the very smallest thing I could possibly think of to start with, which was doing the dishes every day. I was like, I don't know how other people don't have piles of dishes. So I'm just going to focus on doing my dishes every single day, whatever that means. And so doing that changed my whole house. Like doing the dishes every day meant that my kitchen never got out of control. And so seeing that and experiencing that made me see the impact of the daily stuff. And so I was in the beginning of the blog, I was adding, a new task every week where I would just like try to start doing this thing on the daily. And that through that, I, figured out which ones had the biggest impact. But I saw that what I had thought of was cleaning was really just catching up on the daily stuff. Like as if I had the dishes already done, then when I said I'm going to clean my house, then the thing that used to take me hours to catch up on, I skipped all of that and moved on and actually got to cleaning. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm not using up all my energy on something that was really just something I've been putting off and not doing. And then I also focused on decluttering, getting stuff out of my house because I knew that I had too much stuff. I didn't understand all the things I know now, but I knew I had too much and needed stuff out. So as I decluttered, I realized, oh, okay, not stuff shifting, meaning not just moving it into the master bedroom, but actually getting stuff out of the house. It was like, oh, the less stuff I have in my house, the less it gets everywhere when life gets busy and things, end up the stuff explosion or whatever. It's like the less stuff I have, the less out of control my house can get. And so it was like, okay, having the clutter out, having the dailies done actually daily meant that when it was time to clean, I was actually doing the things that other people were talking about, which was, you know, dusting and vacuuming and mopping and cleaning bathrooms. And I was like, oh, okay. And also I realized that if you don't have clutter and you're keeping up with the daily stuff, you can go a lot longer without cleaning, because it's not the people don't walk into your house and go, oh, this is messy. It's like, oh, it looks great. And then maybe they look a little closer and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that bathroom does need to be cleaned or whatever. But it changed how I viewed my house and made me realize that I was not speaking the same language as those other people were when they said they didn't clean. We weren't talking about the same thing.
Right. Okay. So then what is the difference between decluttering and organizing?
So this is a huge one. I used to look around my house. It was so messy. And I would be like, oh, I've got to get organized. Oh, I've got to get organized. Because it feels like that's the answer, right? But when I would say, okay, I'm going to actually tackle this space and I'm going to get organized today, the first thing I would do is sit down and make a plan for how it was all going to work. Or I would go shopping for organizing products. And I wasn't actually doing anything. And usually I used up all my energy that I had experienced in this moment where I was like, things are going to change right now. I used up all that energy with the planning and the shopping. And then I never got to actually doing anything. And so because I was at such a low point, I said, I'm just going to declutter. Like, I don't even have it in me to organize. I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm just going to declutter. And when I did that, my house started to really change in the way that I had always wanted it to when I said I needed to get organized. You know what I mean? Like, just getting stuff out of my house that didn't need to be there made my house look better, feel better, function better. Like, all of the things I wanted from organizing, I actually got by just getting out the excess. And that's when I realized that decluttering and organizing are not the same thing. And thinking of them as the same thing does more harm than good for someone like me, because it keeps us from getting started. When I say I'm just going to declutter, not going to worry about organizing, I'm just going to declutter, then there is nothing to do before I get started. I just need to start getting stuff out. And when I get stuff out, it immediately improves. And then I really see an impact on my home.
Right. And kind of one of the common things that organizers do is they say, pull everything out and start with an empty space and then put it back in. What is your approach with that?
So that logically is the right way to do things, but it does not play out that way in real life for me. It doesn't play out well in real life for me, and it doesn't play out well in real life for a lot of other people, I have realized. So, I used to do that because I thought that's what the experts say to do. That is what makes sense. And so I would do it. But the problem was I would pull everything out of a space and then I would think, oh, this space looks great with nothing in it. But I would turn around, I would see the mess, and I was immediately overwhelmed and paralyzed by that, or I would pull everything out of a space, work on it for a little while, life would happen, or I would just get distracted. And then I had to stop in the middle, and now the space is worse than it was before. Like, what used to be shoved in a cabinet is now piled all over the countertops or all over the hallway floor or whatever. And it was like, okay, this idea that it has to get worse before it gets better, or, anytime you declutter, I end up with a bigger mess before I actually get, anywhere in it. That thinking that was the only way made me not get started, because I was like, well, I better not do anything then until I know for sure I'm going to have X amount of time with no interruptions. Well, when are you going to have guaranteed amount of time? And besides, I was dealing with such a big mess. And then I would put it off longer because I thought, well, I got to have this much time. So I'll wait till, spring break or Christmas or summer or whatever. And then as I put it off, it just got worse, which made it more overwhelming, which made me think I needed more time. So it was just this really bad cycle. And I was like, I just have to get started. And so what I do, the short version of what I do is I remove one item at a time, and I have a process that I go like 5 steps so that you know what to pull out when. I remove one item at a time and I make a final decision about that item. It either goes in the trash bag or recycling bin, or it goes in the donatable donate box, or it goes to its actual final home where it's supposed to live in my house. And I have decluttering questions that help me determine what that home is. But by doing that, I'm never in a worse situation. I'm only making progress. It's only getting better and better. I may not be able to know for sure when I'll be finished, but I can know for sure that at any point when I either step away because I want to or I have to, the space is better than it was before. And knowing that I can declutter like that means that I've got 5 minutes. Well, I can work on the space, like, because I'm not going to make it any worse. I'm only going to make it better. So I might as well start pulling out trash and throwing it away, or, moving through things. And that changed everything for me, because it let me get started immediately and not have no wonderful excuse to wait, until later when it's a better time. Yeah.
Like it goes from project mentality to, I can't remember if these are the words you used, but like maintenance mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Project brain is a real struggle for me. I have a project brain. That's where I feel competent. Like I am successful in areas of my life that I can treat like a project, so I was a theater arts teacher, which meant I could put on a big production, and I was very organized in that process. I like to write books. That's a huge project, and I have it very organized, my process, but I would try to treat my house like that. And that didn't work well. Like my house is not a project. My house is an ongoing daily thing that gets lived in, gets messed up as soon as you clean it up. And so there's no grand finale with the house.
Yeah. So one of the biggest epiphanies I had while reading, so I read How to Manage Your Home first. Is that How to Manage Your Home without, what is it?
Losing your mind.
Without losing your mind. Okay.
Without losing your mind. Yeah.
Okay. When I read that book, the biggest epiphany for me was I somehow had attributed all cleanliness to nurture, like as a learned skill, rather than acknowledging that it could be just part of my personality, that I approach things in a different way. So I'd love to kind of take that philosophical overview and ask you that question. How much of tidiness and organization do you think is nature, and how much do you think is nurture? And how does that affect the approach?
I definitely think, obviously there's both, but I would tend a little more toward nature, because what I know for sure, what I have learned for sure through my own self and through working with other people, is that my struggle with this is directly related to how my brain works. Okay. So as I started writing about this in the beginning, even though it was not going to be the thing I was really going to write about, I did want to learn about blogging. And so I would put it out there in all the ways that you would do that back then. And as people started reading and commenting, people were saying, oh my word, this is how my brain works. This is how my brain works too. And so I would click on their name. This was back in the blogger, days, where you click on their name, see the little profile. And I started to see that all of the people who were saying that this is how their brain works were highly creative people, like very, very creative people. Now, I don't define that anymore as just like artists and poets and theater teachers, which is kind of what I was seeing a lot of. I have a lot of, mathematicians and, people who we just think differently,
right.
like
Einstein, right? Einstein had a messy
We are Einstein. Yeah. He was very messy.
Yeah.
We see the world differently, which is a wonderful quality. But, in the beginning, when I was just kind of seeing like, okay, artists and poets and all these things, I realized, okay, there is a relationship here, whatever it is, there's a relationship between my creative brain, which I am very thankful for, which I love about myself, which I celebrate. There's a relationship between that and my struggle in my home, and whatever that relationship is, it does exist. So anyway, so I saw this relationship there, and here's what it did for me. Okay. When I realized that this is how my brain works, it made me realize, okay, I don't need to feel like a failure because traditional organizing advice doesn't work for me. Like, I had read the books, I had looked at things, I had tried, and every time it didn't work, I felt like a failure. And I would think, okay, I think I'm actually hopeless. Like, I think I'm actually broken. I think this is actually impossible for me. But when I started to realize, oh, there's a direct relationship between how my brain works and how I function in my home, I said, okay, well, I don't have to feel like a failure because traditional organizing advice doesn't work for me. You know, it's written by organized people. Instead, I just have to figure out what does work for me. Like, and so it let me go, okay, what works for my brain? And so that's when I started coming up with different, ways of thinking of things, habits to implement, things to put into my home, processes, my decluttering process. It works well for me. Some people are like, what? Why would you do one item? Like, because that is what works. Like, that's what actually works for me. And so what was the question? Nature versus nurture?
Yeah.
I think that nurture is very helpful, but I also think that the key to successful nurturing is acknowledgement of nature. In a lot of is acknowledging that, because I hear some really tough stories from people who have very difficult relationships with their mother because their mother was just trying to get them to understand from her perspective versus, like your friend who was like, I don't even know how it got like this. I can't even imagine this, so it's tough. And I think, for example, with my mom is great, and so she was always very helpful, always tried. But the thing I look back and I realize that would have been more helpful for me is if she had acknowledged that I have a very low clutter threshold. There's no way for her to know that because I hadn't grown up to write the book and make up the term, but what I know now is I have a low clutter threshold. She has a very high clutter threshold. What that means is she can handle a lot of stuff. She can keep a lot of stuff and keep it under control and her house stay under control. So she has the ability to do that. I grew up thinking that the right thing to do was to bring stuff in my home for future possibilities while it was on sale, things I might need in the future, whatever. I would bring all that stuff into my home, but I can't handle it. And so it just looked like, it was just piles, like an explosion. It was terrible in my home. And my house was a disaster because I had more stuff than I could handle. I had too much stuff. And so what would have been helpful would have been if she had known that and just gotten rid of stuff of mine. But in her mind, and I'm not blaming, okay, in any way, like I'm not blaming her because, like I said, she's been great. But in her mind, because she is somebody who then just organizes it and can keep it organized and can keep it under control, she never saw that the problem was too much stuff. She just kept trying to organize it. And then I couldn't maintain the systems that she would come up with. And so I do feel like there's both nature and nurture in there, but I do think that the acknowledgement of nature, I believe, is the most important part.
Right. And it's like any other aspect of parenting that you just have to customize it. It has to be ultimately customized. If I'm going to teach each of my kids, in fact, rereading your book this time, I wrote my main goal in the back of the book and I said, find every child's clutter threshold. And that is our main goal with organizing their bedrooms, organizing, decluttering, whatever you want to use, is we're going to figure that point out by trial and error and figure out how much stuff they can have in their room.
Yes. And you figure that out by, acknowledging that, my definition for clutter is anything that consistently gets out of control. So it's like, if it's consistently getting out of control, there's too much stuff.
Yeah.
So we declutter some more. And then if it's still getting out of control, which, I determined that kind of the little magic formula is, can I get it back? Can I get everything back into place in a 5-minute pickup?
Oh, nice.
And then if we can get it back under control in 5 minutes, then we're good. right? So
Yeah.
it's not that everything always has to be perfect. It's just that, can I get it back under control in 5 minutes?
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So I would love to know how your relationship to your stuff has changed through this process. How do you think about your stuff differently?
So first of all, the clutter threshold is key. Like I so I realized that I had a clutter threshold as I had decluttered a bunch of stuff, and then just had this moment where I realized my house is staying under control. Like my I can do this. Like this is not feeling like I'm swimming through jello anymore. It's like this is doable for me. And realizing that made me realize, oh, I prefer to have my house under control over having this stuff. Like it's more beneficial to me to not have the thing and be able to keep my house under control. I also just, I started, I mean, I really think that's the ultimate thing, is like the function of my home. As I realized how much easier it was to maintain, how much better we could function in our home, how my home was serving the purpose that I wanted it to serve when we bought it, because I wasn't bumping into things all the time, because things weren't falling out of cabinets when I opened the door as much as they used to, but,
Right.
I mean, like that function was like, oh, okay, this is my goal. This is worth it to me to, to do that. And with every item that I declutter, and then it's easier to live in my house, the next item that's a little iffy looks different to me. It's like, yeah, I could totally keep that thing, but my life will be easier if I don't have it to ever have to think about or touch or move or stress over again. And so I think I'd rather just have it go.
Yeah. No, that's great. Do you find that, that sentimental clutter has become easier to deal with?
Yeah, it definitely has. In the beginning, everything was sentimental. And in the beginning, it was really hard to get rid of sentimental stuff, but the more I experienced living in a house with less stuff and how much easier that was, it was like, oh, okay. And I started to realize that having fewer sentimental things meant that I really was able to treasure them and enjoy them more. Like if I have one cute little pair of baby shoes, like, or even like, okay, so even if it's not displayed, like I've kept one baby outfit of each of my kids, and there might be others randomly throughout the house, but like I've kept one from each of my kids. They're on the shelf in my master bedroom closet. So that's not some special place. It's just, that's where I would look for them first. That's where I know they are. So that's where they are, even in my new house where we just moved. They're there. And every time I run across them, I have all these lovey feelings. Like, I'm like, oh my word, I can't believe he was so little. I can't believe, oh, they were so cute in this. And I feel all the good feelings. But back when I had literal garbage bags and boxes full of baby stuff that I thought, oh, can I really get rid of this? Because my kids wore it as an infant, whatever. Those things were a huge pain. Like I would trip over them. I had to shove them into a corner because I needed to do something else in that space. I had to stack them. I was constantly moving them around. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm not actually treasuring that item there. It's only producing negative feelings for me when it's a whole bunch of stuff. But when I keep one, then I only get good feelings from that,
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. So to zoom way out, what would you consider your big why? Why do you take the time to maintain this? And why is it important to you that you now keep this new standard of organization and declutter, as opposed to how you lived before? Like if somebody's deciding whether to take the plunge and do the work, what would you tell them?
I have to give my little soapbox issue here real quick though. Can I do that?
Yes, please.
I don't think it's necessary to know your why before you get started. I know there are a lot of people who want to talk about the why, and I couldn't have explained the why before. I knew my house was a disaster. Nobody needed to tell me that my life would be easier if my house was under control. I mean, and it was often kind of like when I would say, okay, I need to, I really want to get my kitchen organized. I mean, how do I do that? And they were like, well, if you get your kitchen organized, it'll be easier for you to cook dinner and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I already know that.
Yeah.
Just tell me how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of just get started. And as you get started, you're going to start to experience your why, and it's all going to make sense. Like, so I basically am like, anything that is a really great excuse to not get started immediately, I have to put that away and say, no, go ahead and get started. And then you start to understand as you're going through the process, because my first step is trash, which is literal, actual, non-emotional. I'm not analyzing whether this is trash. I'm just removing the obvious trash. Anyway, so it gets me going, and then I start to figure things out as I'm going. But as far as my why, I've really actually thought about this a lot lately. And I think it's because, we just moved, and we have a house that there are parts of it that were updated and are lovely. And there are other parts that, oh my word, like, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do when you start to think about it. And I've been like, certain things don't bother me the way that I think other people, it bothers them so much that they can't understand why, wallpaper doesn't bother somebody, that I have to do it immediately. I'm like, no, I'll get to it, but it's going to take me a while, but it's made me realize that my why is just, I want my house to function so that my house is not holding me back from the things I want to do. Well, what are the things I want to do? I like writing books and doing creative projects. And, yes, I'm writing books about this stuff, but I mean, like, these are the things, the creative projects, the podcasts, the videos, that kind of stuff. That's what I want to do. And if my house is out of control, it keeps me from being able to do those things. So it's like, that's really my goal. My goal is not to have a magazine worthy home. I like it when it, is a little bit decorated here and there, but I generally have a friend come in and help me decorate, because I'm like, oh, that just sounds easier to me than me trying to figure this out, So I'll have them come in, and then they'll help me with the room, and I'll be like, yeah, looks great. Okay, now I can do this, but my goal is just, I want to be able to function. I want us as a family to be able to live the lives that we want to live, like both having people in the home at times, and also being able to go do other things without, all this work to be done.
Right. Every Saturday. Okay, let's get this house under control. This is what we do for family time.
Right. But if I can keep up with the dailies, then if we have to, miss a cleaning day or whatever, it's like, okay, well, that's going to be okay, because the dailies are keeping the house under control. Yes, there's stuff to do in addition to that, but it's amazing the power of those, daily tasks.
Yeah. Okay. So you have 3 sons, is that right?
No, I have 2 sons and a daughter.
How have you been able to teach them some of these principles, or have you brought them through your whole process?
So my kids are 20, 18, and my daughter will be 16 tomorrow. So yes, I have taught them. Also, as they get to be young adults, they then forget everything that you teach them, and then they relearn it and don't give you any credit for having taught them. No, I mean, this is just the reality of that, but
of anything.
So yes, exactly. Like yes, I have taught them. I was very purposeful about teaching them how to clean their bathroom, how to vacuum, how to do dishes, all that kind of stuff. But, like I said, sometimes they just forget all that stuff that you taught them. And so it's reteaching, but then you have to teach them in a different way with a different stage of life. It's a very different, it's like, suggestions, hoping that they think it's their idea, and then it will actually take, so,
right.
But as far as like the decluttering process, yes. I mean, like, my decluttering process is very non-confrontational. it doesn't depend on emotions at all. Like I don't use emotions as part of the process. So therefore it works really well with other people. We're just basing things on instincts and facts, like the reality of the space that you have and all that. And so I work through that process with them in different situations, like when we moved and stuff, is going through and like, how do we look at this overwhelming boxes that you still haven't unpacked and it's been 6 weeks or whatever. Okay, let's just start with the easy stuff. Let's start with the trash. Let's start with this. Let's, move through the process. And so, yeah, I do use my process with them. And then sometimes they say, well, Mom, this process really works. Maybe you know what you're talking about. And then the next day they forget. So anyway, I hate to be discouraging to people with younger kids who think that they're going to remember everything you ever said. But you have older kids too,
Yeah,
right?
I have 5 kids from 6 to 16. So I exactly
So you know what I'm
you're
talking about.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah. And I thought when they were all under 8, I was like, oh, I'm going to just teach them this. And then my life will be so easy because they'll just know it and they'll do it.
yep.
Yeah. We learn so quickly, don't we?
We do. And I always encourage moms of teenagers. I'm like, it's a management role at this point, which management means making sure things happen, reminding people, when they needed to be reminded, holding people accountable for things, but it's an ongoing thing. I always say, like, if you go into a fast food restaurant and it's like disgusting and horribly run, you don't blame the teenagers who work there. You blame the manager. Right. And so I'm like, that's just the reality of this job that we have at this phase, but it's also fun. Like I love having older kids. They're a lot of fun, but they're also jerks sometimes. So
don't I know it? Yes. That, my friends, is a big part of the joy and frustration of managing a home with kids. We don't have complete control over the stuff in our house because we share it. And of course, we wouldn't wish that away. But Dana's books, and specifically Decluttering at the Speed of Life, have given me more vocabulary to use when I'm helping my kids get their clutter under control. I've even read passages aloud to them as we tackle their rooms. And sometimes that's the most helpful thing, hearing advice from someone other than your own mom. So thank you, Dana, for helping us and all of our little slobs come clean. If you want more episodes about tidying up, check out episode 90, How She Manages Stuff, episode 11, How She Teaches Kids to Clean, episode 13, How She Teaches Kids to Be Tidy, and 15, How She Motivates Kids to Work. Next week, we'll hear from the lovely Jen Martin, an organizing expert, to take us to the next level. Thank you so much for listening to the How She Moms podcast and for being part of this community. There are so many other ways for you to connect and hopefully also contribute. I share tips and ideas regularly on Instagram and Facebook at How She Moms. You can find past episodes and other resources at howshemoms.com. And you can always just email me directly at whitney@howshemoms.com. Special thanks to my own wonderful mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.